You know, when the power goes out, no amount of flipping the light switch will do anything. You have to wait for the electrical company to restore the lines or for the storm to pass and then for electricity to come back. But no amount of flipping the switch is what gets you connected to the electricity or brings the light. So, what do you suppose that means for how we're connected into God's power through the Spirit? That's actually the question we're going to take a look at this time on Freed for Love. When the power's out, like we said, no amount of flipping switches will bring the lights back on. But once you are connected again, then yeah, the switches work and all of a sudden you're tapped back into power that lights up the room. It's interesting, when Paul writes to the Galatians, as we've been seeing throughout this whole series, the underlying question we've looked at so far is, are we going to let those outsiders, those Gentiles, non-Jewish people, are we going to let them belong to the community of Jesus without having followed the rules of Judaism first, right? Are we going to let them be followers of Jesus without being circumcised, keeping the kosher laws, observing all the rest of the commandments? And so far, Paul's tried to make a pretty good case that they belong because Jesus says they belong, and if Jesus says someone is acceptable, they're acceptable. Now Paul does an interesting move as we get into chapter 3. He asks his readers, he asks the congregations there in Galatia about their own experience. How did you come to know the power of the living God and the Holy Spirit? Was it because you followed the rules well enough, or was it because you believed in Jesus? In other words, Paul's saying, is this a matter of you doing the rituals rightly, and that's how you got the access to the power of God? Or is it because you trusted that the power would be there? In other words, it's something like when the power goes out, flipping the switch doesn't actually bring the electricity. It's not a matter of your effort to make it happen. If the electricity isn't coming to the building, no amount of switch flipping will make a difference. But if your building is connected to live electricity, all of a sudden the lights come on and the outlets work. It's not a matter of your effort to make it happen, though. It's a matter of being connected and simply trusting that when you flip the switch, the lights will come on. Paul says it this way to the Galatians. He says, how was it that you first experienced the Spirit? Was it because you did the works of the law? In other words, did you first get access to the powerful presence of God's Spirit as a result of you doing enough of what the religious ritual expectations were? Or was the gift of the Spirit something beyond your control that was given to you as a result of trusting the God who gives, as a result of trusting in Jesus? Paul's going to be laying the groundwork for also talking about their great ancestor in the faith, Abraham. And on the one hand, the Judean community, the descendants of ancient Israel, saw Abraham as their founding father, right? Because that's how the Genesis story tells them, that he's the quintessential Jewish person, right? He's the one given the commandments about circumcision. He's the one whose descendants become the children of Israel, right? And on the other hand, he's also the quintessential Gentile. He's the quintessential outsider because he's worshiping the pagan gods and Ur of the Chaldeans before God gets a hold of him. And Paul's going to say that Abraham was brought into relationship with God. Abraham was given the gifts of the covenant. Abraham was given all these blessings and the claim of God before he kept any rules or followed any commandments. In fact, those follow afterwards, not first. It's a question of where our access to God's kind of power comes from. If we actually believe that our amount of flipping the light switches is what makes the electricity come on, we misunderstand how it works. It's really about being connected to the grid. It's really about having a source of electricity. And when the power goes out because of a storm or an outage or something like that, no amount of my flipping the lights will make it work. But instead, when that power is live, it's simply a matter of trusting that the power will be there. The lights come on with a flip of a switch. But it's not something I've earned or achieved. It's a gift that I'm brought into connection with. Understanding that difference is huge, not just for why the lights do or don't come on, but for our life together as Christians. When we understand that other people are brought in and that they belong, not because of what they've done to earn it or achieve it, or because of their sameness, but because God's grace has given them the gift of the Spirit, because God has chosen to say they belong. And the most we can do in response to God's amazing grace is simply to receive it. Our churchy word for that is trust. Our churchy understanding is that that's what faith is. It's simply receiving a gift that's been handed to us. Our belonging, in other words, isn't because we've done rituals rightly, whether ancient rituals or modern ones, but because we're willing to trust that God, who's promised us a free gift, actually is giving us a free gift. Maybe even we'll discover that the ability to trust, the ability to receive that gift, is also a gift of God's grace as well. That's where the conversation is headed this coming Thursday in our next series conversation in Freed for Love as we're walking through the letter to the Galatians. We hope you can join us. If you can be around the table live in conversation at 1 o'clock, there's a place for you at the table here at Community of Christ. If you can't join us in person, catch up with these video review sessions, and together we'll explore what it means to be freed for love. See you along the way.